All right. Welcome to Nishnabik Virtual History Session 2. And we're going to continue on with creation stories. We're going to talk about Waynayboozoo. And I'll just start off by quickly introducing myself. Wapshki menes is it Mr. Tem Nisnakas, Bijuni do them, Ishkuna Ningdonji, Nishnabe Nim. And welcome to Treaty 2 territory. Now, I am Alan Sutherland, is my common name, and Earth Lodge is what I do. This presentation is from the Earth Lodge. It's a series that will lead up to our 150th year of of Treaty 2, which we entered with the newcomers of 1871. So this history is going to go up to that event. In the meantime, we like to start off from the beginning. So this is what this is about. I have it on PowerPoint and I'm ready to go. And I'm just going to by stating that when we greet each other, we say bonjour. Now, bonjour is not French like bonjour. It's actually bonjour in our language is you can say in our language ani, hello. But when you say bonjour, you're recognizing the other human being, and you're basically saying that I know the stories, I know my origin, I'm Anishinaabe. So that's when you say bonjour, then you can say that. And after this session, you would able to say it. If you watch this session, you would easily able to say bonjour to anybody that you greet. So let's get going. Now, today I want to talk about Waynayboozoo and continue on with our creation stories. I want to speak about Waynayboozoo, or sometimes people say Nana Bush or or Whiskey Jack, because this trickster is well known throughout Turtle Island, but they come in different names because of the different languages and different culture and the way they want to talk about that original trickster. Now, Waynayboozoo is known as storytelling, or in our stories. And Waynayboozoo is known for his powerful magic, to give special powers and attributes to the animals and plants and such. He has that influence. And Waynayboozoo is also, as I mentioned earlier, a trickster bent on making humans look silly. So these are stories of, there's always a moral understanding or principle behind Waynayboozoo stories. So he's bent on making human beings silly. And although his own jokes are often backfired on him, but it's also the means to say it's okay to make mistakes. Learn from that and grow. So as a trickster, he could change form and take the shape of an animal. And one of the distinguishing features of Waynayboozoo when he was in human form, as drawn on rocks or carved in stone by the Ojibwe, was his rabbit-like ears. That's how you know that this is Waynayboozoo. And he was sent to Earth to teach the people about healing plants, about kindness and generosity and honesty. So he is very much very influential in terms of who we are as the Anishinaabe. So the story begins with Winona, the mother of Waynayboozoo, and I spoke a little bit about her in our first session. And that first session was a little bit rushed, but this time I'm going to take it slow. There's not going to be a lot of slides. It's going to be based on oral tradition. So I want to talk about Winona. Now, she is the daughter of Nukamis. In our language, Nukamis is our like our grandmother. It's a term respect for elder women who are kind and forgiving and ready to share what they know with children. They tell stories about humans or acted out by humans. They talk about life, about what we should do and what we should not do. And this reminds me of the way I was growing up in a small community of Scout and First Nation. And my grandparents are the one who raised me. And I'm very fond of loving memories of my grandmother. Like Mother Earth teaches Newcomis with show. This I'll show you how it's done. And that's how you learn. As a child, you observe, you see how it's being done. So remember the four orders of creation, like from session one. Well, children and adults not only must watch, but they have to listen to everything around them, the insects, the birds, the animals, the fish, the plants, how to learn how to live in harmony with nature in that environment, to have a good relationships with our neighbors, and we say all our relations. Those are what we have around us. Now, as grandparents tell stories, children learn language. They're enriched in their imaginations and they rouse their curiosities about the here before and the hereafter, and talks about the moment. That's where power is, always in the moment. Now I'm gonna go on and talk about this story. One day when Nona sneaked away from Nukamis, and she was seduced by the west wind, who stole her heart. So she was sneaking off to west wind all the time, having this affair without Nukamis knowing. And at first, part of the wooing, a part of getting to know each other, West Wind was kind to Winona, but he felt very possessive of her, and was mean to her. Now, when Winona from this relationship became pregnant, the West Wind left her. Now, Winona went back to Nukamis, and she immediately looked directly into her eyes and said, "You're going to have a child. Your eyes tell on you." That's what Nukamis said. And she paused for a moment and then asked, "Who did this to you?" "Opangishimuk," she said, as tears were streaming down her face. And then Nukamis states, "You're going to give birth to a Manitou's child." So Winona just didn't have one baby. When the time came, she had four, as I mentioned in the first session. The first baby was Waynayboozoo, and that was the most powerful of all babies. It even showed up as a little bunny rabbit, so it looked fragile. So Nukamis had to tend that one right away in her wigwam. Now, Winona at this time was also giving birth to three other babies. And this happened so quickly. That was, as I mentioned, these three brothers of Waynayboozoo is Manjekawis, Pakawis, and Ibayo. Now, the last baby was a difficult birth. Sadly, Winona passed away giving birth to the last baby. The babies grew up very quickly and they left. By the time Nukamis returned to Winona, she found out her daughter had passed away and there were no other babies to be found. That is why Waynayboozoo was the only grandchild Nukamis had raised. She always called him Lucius, which is my grandson. This is how they say. This is how they say that Waynayboozoo and his brothers had come to the world. Now, what we know about Waynayboozoo is that he is powerful, and his powers come from the west wind, because that is who his dad is. We know he gets his power from the stars because that is where his family comes from. You see, his grandmother, Nukamus, came from the moon. Dibiki Gezis. Now, as the story goes, there was these sisters, and Nukamis is one of those sisters with their grandmother, which is the moon, which is the moon. Now, these three sisters, sometimes, sometimes sisters and brothers could be mean. Anyway, one of them was jealous because Nukamis had a hairpiece, always looking after her hair. Well, anyway, they were fighting over this hairpiece, and one of the sisters shoved Nukamis from the moon, and she was falling to the earth. And she fell into the water. She fell into a lake, and she went to the bottom. And Nukamis was upset. Oh man, wouldn't you be? He's sitting there steaming and didn't want to move. Didn't want to move. Just wanted to sit there under the water in the bottom of that lake. Now, it just so happens that the bear has seen all this. He's seen Nukamis fall into the water. As bears do, they observe and he stick around and see when she's going to come back up. Well, she was there for a long time. So he's curious. Now he dives in, and bears are great swimmers. He dived in and he dived down to the bottom, and he see Nukamis and says, "What's going on?" And Nukamis says, "I'm mad." He says, "I'm mad at my sister." Oh, well, you should come up. You should come up to the sun. It's nice up there. Nice and warm. No, I want to stay down here a little longer. I'm upset. Oh, I understand, the bear said. Well, you know what? You should come up anyway because there's bad manitous down here. They might do something to you. Maybe you should come up. So the bear convinced Nukamis to come up and onto the shore. They went on to the west shore, and after a while, as time went on, they got to know each other, and they were good friends in the beginning, and they created a relationship among those two. It turned into love. And they decided that they'll share a home together. They made a wigwam, and that's where they lived in love with each other. Now, back in the day, there was no official place for a marriage. You just do it. You just live together, and you go and shack up, as they say. You go and shack up. Well, that's what they did. They shacked up, and I guess from this love came that Nukamis was now expecting. She's expecting a baby, and this one is special because, oh man, this is a quick birth, and her belly, it's like it was like thunder, and it felt like lightning, and something magical was happening, like a strong Manitou was coming. So that's when Nona was born. So when we get back to the story, both Waynayboozoo had these medicines that are both from the upper world, from the moon, from the earth itself, with the medicines from Makwa, the bear, because that's what Nona gave, and the bear gave to Nona, and into this life. So because of these powers later on was given to Waynayboozoo, so he's both connected to the earth and to the spirit world, to the stars, as you will, upper world. Now, because of these powers were combined in Waynayboozoo, it made his heart connected to upper and lower and all around. So he was a very strong person, Waynayboozoo, and he had a strong heart. So, and as we continue on with the story, and I talk about Waynayboozoo, and I'll talk about the Anishinaabe, the original man. And if I say Anishinaabeg, I mean the original people. Or if I say Anishinaabeg, like I'm describing something that's associated to the Anishinaabe. Here we go. So while growing up and being raised by newcomers, yeah, while growing up, and now we're talking about Waynayboozoo, when growing up and being raised by newcomers, he had many adventures and learning experiences that come with it. And shortly after that, he had his vision quest. He wanted to go on a long journey. He wanted to explore and find himself. And that's what you do when you're young, is that you gotta allow a young adult to go and find themselves. And the vision quest is one way. Or the girls go to, as maidens, they go to their grandmothers. But eventually, by the time you get to the age of 27, you should really been grounded. You should really have a sense of what you want to do for the rest of your life. Now, before he left on this long journey to go and find himself, as he was leaving the lodge, his grandmother's parting words to him was, I have called you Nushis all this time, but from now on, I will call you Nishnabé. So on his journey, the creator, the great spirit, Gichi Manitou, have instructed him to name everything on his journey. Go name everything that you see. And if you see different animals, I want you to name them. If you see different plants, I want you to name them. Different trees, different rocks, different locations. Wherever you go, name everything. So that's what Waynayboozoo was doing, was going out and naming things. But then he observed that the animals were in pairs, and yet he felt alone. He felt alone, and he asked the great spirit, can you send me a companion while I do this task? And that is when the wolves have shown up, Mayagan. He already had a close relationship with wolves because they're the ones that shown him when he was younger how to hunt, how to work with a pack, and how to organize and share responsibilities. But he became a great hunter because of the wolves. Now, that's gonna be your friend. So his brother Wolf, they both started on with the journey. They traveled the earth together, naming all that we know and see today. So everything that we have all around us is in our language. The Anishinaabe language. Anishinaabe will win. Everything is named. So when they completed the task, the Great Spirit revealed his name to him. He says, you may not remember this, but this name is yours, called Waynayboozoo. And the Great Spirit said, from this day on, you are to separate your paths. You must go your separate ways. What shall happen to you, one will happen to the other. You both are closely connected to the earth. Manitou ekwe. Also later on, we'll say, Ni mama aki. But both the wolf and man are very much connected. Whatever happens to man will happen to the wolf. Whatever happens to the wolf will happen to man, especially if you stay connected to the earth. Now, that is why the ancestor of the dog today, the domestic dog today, comes from the wolf, man's best friend. So that's where that memory, that blood memory, that connection is associated from. So Mayagan and Waynayboozoo, they set off on their different ways. And that's what sometimes happens when you might grow up with your favorite cousins and friends, and you go through school together, but sometimes you just drift apart. Then occasionally you get to see each other again. Now, when Waynayboozoo at this time went back home to Newcomis, and shared with Newcomis all the beautiful things that he had seen in his journey. So there was a lot of sharing back and forth, because he came back a man, and he's now having these beautiful conversations, not as a grandmother and grandson, but more like friends. And that just made their relationship stronger. And it was at this time that Newcomis was sharing more about his origin, in terms of where who his father was, and that could be difficult. So she wasn't sharing everything yet, just a little bit at a time, so that he can get used to it. Now, Newcomis was getting older, and Waynayboozoo was concerned that you know uh, she needs warmth. She knows about warmth. She knows about grandfather's son and how warm that could be. So she asked Newcomis, "Is there a way? Can I give you a gift? Can I go out there and get you a gift? I want you to feel better." And Newcomis told him about the firekeeper, who has this marvelous gift of fire. And it's a long journey, she told him. You're gonna have to earn it to get to his lodge. He says, I'm up to the task. And he went on. He went over a lot of places. And eventually he came across Firekeeper Lodge. At last, when Waynayboozoo came to the Firekeeper's lodge, he was surprised to see that the old man had a young and beautiful daughter. For her, he felt a feeling that he had never had felt before. That's another story I can get into maybe later on. Now, the Firekeeper was very stern with him. I have waited for you for a long time, he had said. The Great Spirit told me that you will be coming. He said, since that time, many others have tried to find this place. Many of them tried to trick me, but I could tell that I could tell that they were evil forces who wanted to use the fire. I have, and the fire that they wanted my fire in a bad way, that they would do almost anything for it. You see, fire in our language, ishkudi, is a special gift from the Great Spirit. He said, as firekeeper, I have responsibilities. And when you have that kind of responsibilities, you got to let other people know what they are. So he gave the teaching. If you respect it and take care of it, it'll take care of you. It'll bring you comfort. It'll give you warmth. But locked up in this goodness is also evil. If you neglect fire or use it in the wrong way, it could destroy the entire creation. Many things in life have forces of good and evil locked up in them. Every time you use fire, you should remember that this is the same fire which the Great Spirit made the sun, Jesus. It is also the fire that the Great Spirit had put in the heart of your Mother Earth. Also, it's also in the Anishinaabe. Ishkodi. Ode is heart. That blue flame of creation, that flame that's in our heart, is also the same burning fire of all creation. Now you can use it to burn tobacco. There was many teachings around this fire, and the first medicine was for the Anishinaabe to understand. Asama, tobacco. The smoke will be your thoughts if you can use when you can see them. So that smoke is when you can see your thoughts. What's your intentions in your heart as you hold on to a sema? So let the smoke carry your prayers to Geshem Manitou and all of creation. This smoke will be your thoughts as you see them. With these teachings, the fire keeper sent fire to the original man so that he can take home to Nukumis. So I just wanted to, at this point, go back and talk about Nukumis a little bit. So when he brought the gift, they put it in a bowl, a rock bowl. It was a long journey back, so it wasn't easy to keep that fire lit, but he got it done. He got it done after going through a lot of difficult places, but he got it done. And he brought the fire to his grandmother, Nukamis. Look. And from then on, they enjoyed the comfort of that warmth in the wigwam. And it's usually in the winter time when it's very cold that all you have is your stories. So this is a time to share stories. And Nuka Miss was getting older now. She says, "Oh, I have lots to share with you." So they spent a lot of time Waynayboozoo listening to the stories of Nuka Miss. But he he knew, and she told him, I think I'll be going home. I'll be going home soon. And of course Waynayboozoo was sad about it, but he knew that he wasn't losing her. She just has to go back where she came from. It, but she'll always be there for Waynayboozoo. So before she went on her journey, she revealed all the origin of and how she came to be, how she came to this earth, how she was disobedient and rebellious in a lot of ways by running away and then meeting up with Westwind, and how Westwind was mean to her. But he still was fond of him because they had a relationship. And Nukamis told him everything that he needed to know to go on and carry on the story. So that too can be passed down. So when Nukamis was was moved back, she went back to the moon. She flew back to the moon, and that's where she is to this day. She's with grandmother moon, but she has responsibility to watch from above. So she has a lot of teachings to give to the women, especially to the women of Nishnawbe, where she teaches about the water ceremonies, how the moon affects the water. She also talks about time and how they can work with balance with the sun. Give time. You can about the monthly moon, the months of each full moon, moon cycles, and what you need to do there. And then you got night and day. You have time. So she has never and time or seeing the moon and seeing her full moon in all her glory every month is the reminder that she never left, that she's still teaching, she's still involved with us. And if it wasn't for her, without having the moon, there would be no life on Earth. We very much depend on not only the sun's energy, but also the loving energy of the moon. Anyway, there's a lot of teachings there, and I already went too far because it's really the women that should be telling all about this story. Now, I want to go back to Waynayboozoo. So he wanted to go and find his father, the West Wind. And that's another story. But I just wanted to leave it here because there's a lot of Waynayboozoo stories. And eventually we can talk about forgiveness because that's what happened with Westman. And we'll talk about honoring those that give life. And that is why that west wind is very important to the Anishinaabe, but the east direction is very important because that's where life comes from. And that's where Winona is. So to the east is Winona, new beginnings, our mother. To the west, in our journey of life, we'll eventually have to go back to spirit. We'll go through that door. But in the in between, it's about living life to the. I just want to go back to why we call our place today on is Turtle Island, and that's one of the creation stories. Now, I really don't have time to get into the relationship between the firekeeper's daughter and Waynayboozoo, but I'll say this: from that union, from that marriage, from that came creation of the Anishinaabe. There are many, many Anishinaabe everywhere. So going back to the Waynayboozoo stories, there was the Anishinaabe, and there was many what they call ancestral teachings or grandfather teachings, and many other ages. So the events that I'm sharing with you, it comes from a long ago in a time of legend, and oral tradition still carries a little bit of that. But where our oral tradition is this age, from the time of the Great Flood. That's where our oral traditions are very strong. And that's where I'll be focusing on the other sessions. I'll be talking about history from the time of the Great Flood. But I just wanted to talk about how friends can get together and visit each other and have good times. And that is going back to the story with Waynayboozoo and the wolf. You see, occasionally they'll get back together and talk about old times. You know, how it was that I used to play tricks on you and you used to play tricks on me. I used to get mad at you, you used to get mad at me. We make up. We had some good laughter, good times. Good. Well, anyway, this was in the fall. This is like probably by November when the water is starting to freeze, late November, early December, but the water are starting to freeze. And Waynayboozoo says, it's getting quite cold, it's getting quite late. Would you like to come to my village? I'm gonna make supper. You know, I got plenty to feast on. I worked hard all summer. I got plenty to share. Would you like to come and join me? And the wolf says, I would love to sit down with you and have a feast. But before I do I want to hang out here for a little bit while you get things ready. Oh, that's fine, Waynayboozoo said. But he warned his friend. I says, even though my village is on the other side of this lake, I says, don't, even though there's ice, he says, don't go over this ice. He says that I'm not afraid of the thickness of that ice. I know you're light and you're able to make it. It's the Manitous that I'm concerned about. You see, before I was born, they heard I was coming, and they always had this fear of me because of the power that I have. And we never really got along ever since when I went on my journeys. So along the ones that are the most that tries to interfere with me many times is the water serpents. Those Manitous, they are, for some reason, they're very upset with me. They're mad. So because of that, I don't want you to go across the ice. I want you to go around the lake, around the lake. And the wolf says, Mayagan says, okay, I'll do that. Now, after a while, wolf will look across the lake and he'll see the fire that Waynayboozoo is, and he can smell. He has good senses. He could smell the food across the lake. He says, oh boy, now I'm hungry. And I know that Waynayboozoo wants me to go around, but you know what? I'm fast. Oh, I can run fast. I'm fast. I'll run fast that those manitous won't even know I'm there. And the wolf took off. He ran so fast. It looked like he was going to make it too. But Waynayboozoo on the other side was hearing this huffing and puffing that's getting closer and closer. And he looked and he said, he's seen his friend. He's almost making to the other side. He's on his shore. And he was upset. Initially, he was upset. He said, "What are you doing? I told you to go around. Oh, hurry up. Oh, hurry up. You can make it. Yes, you can make it." But the ice opened up and he seen his friend getting dragged down into the water. And so those are those evil manitous. Those are those water serpents. They went down. And Waynayboozoo, he's very good at taking aim and hitting his target. So he grabbed his bow and arrow and he flung it. And he must have hit it because he heard this strange sound that came from that area, that water area. But it was too late. My gun was never to be seen again. Oh, I heard some stories that the only thing that the serpents did was they ate it, they tore it apart, his friend, and they left the reminder on the shore how powerful they are for Waynayboozoo. My Agon's head was on the shore. So I heard similar stories like that. But what was very upsetting for Waynayboozoo, and he wanted revenge. He wanted revenge. And the thing is, this part of this screaming or this terrible sound that came from that little hole on the ice says, you're going to get it now. You're going to get it now. So, but the water was starting to bubble up, and it was flowing out of the hole. And then it was starting to flood the whole lake on top of the ice. Was starting to come through that hole. Then all of a sudden, this water was coming to the shoreline. Waynayboozoo says, "What?" It's almost like it was following him. So he turned around and he went up the hill. He went up the hill, and this water was filling up the valley. It was starting to fill up everywhere. And he went up the hill, and this time he had to run because that water was coming. It was coming. It's like it was chasing Waynayboozoo. And he went on top of the hill and he says, I don't know where to go except for the trees. And the water was reaching him already. So he climbed up the tallest tree he could find, and the water was rising from that valley. And it's just like, now he went to the top. He went to the top. And that water went all the way up, up to his chin, up to his chin, flooded the whole place. And this is where Waynayboozoo says, oh, he was waiting for the next thing to happen. Now, anyway, the water went down, the water went down, the water went down. It went all the way down to its original hole in that ice. It went all the way down into that hole in that ice. But when Waynayboozoo was soaking red, he came down the hill and he went on the shore and he says, okay, so that's how it's going to be, eh? Because Waynayboozoo almost drowned from that experience, but he never gave up his anger. He wanted revenge. But he heard this screech that says, "I hope you learn your lesson, because next time we'll finish the job," sort of thing. But Waynayboozoo had a plan. He had a plan. And that's what human beings do, eh? If you imagine it, you can create it. That's the power of being an Anishinaabe. So his plan was to imagine it and create it. He's going to make himself a raft. Yes, if this happened again, it's going to be on top of that hill. But this time, I'm going to have a raft. I'm going to use those trees. I'm going to put it together. And if this happened again, I'm going to float away. That's what's going to happen. So now he did that. Now he's at war with the evil manitous. He went after the water serpents. And they say they were in great numbers at one time, water serpents. And you may see traces of them. I know in Treaty 2 territory, we have one, Anapogo. And I know people who have seen Manipogo. But around the world, there are sea serpents or sea monsters, they call it, lake monsters, everywhere. Loch Ness, one in BC, one in Great Lakes, Great Slave Lakes, or one near in New York State. There are many that have sightings of this. But there used to have been a lot of them at one time. What was happening is when Waynayboozoo was hunting each and every one of them down. Oh, he was he was stealth. He was very stealth. He was a shape. He shifted into different shapes. And one of the stories that I heard was he found there was a group of them. They were on a shore enjoying the sun. When he disguised themselves, he shifted into a stump. Now this stump was on the tree lines. And then he started moving closer. And every time the serpents will say, "Oh, what's that noise behind me?" And they'll look and they'll see nothing but that stump. Okay. They went back and enjoyed the sun. Meanwhile, that stump was getting closer and they looked again. And I don't know, there's something. No, there's nothing here. And that stump came closer and closer until it was right up to them. Then it was too late. And then Bourgeois took out his bow and he took care of that business. Well, anyway, one of them survived and went in the water and told the other ones, Waynayboozoo is on a warpath. We better do something. And that's when the water started floating up again. Oh, it started flowing all the way up, all the way up. And Waynayboozoo was ready for this. So he started running up that shoreline up to the hill, and the water was following him again. He went up to the top. The water was on his heels. He started climbing the tree. Nope, he didn't do that. He jumped on his raft and he pushed off, and the water was just making him float. He was just floating away, floating away. Ah, good plan, he said, good plan. Well, anyway, this is where the story of Turtle Island comes from, because the whole earth was flooded. There was many have lost their lives. Even Anishinaabe people have lost their lives, but there were survivors because they'll find the means to float. Now, but they needed to come back. They needed a place to come back. So when Waynayboozoo noticed all the animals are coming, they're all coming, and they all want a rest because they're out of breath. They don't want to drown. They all took turns. He says, "Take turns, everybody. Take turns." But there was more and more coming. He said, "Boy, we need to do something." So he asked the Great Spirit. He says, "Help us out, pity us, help us all out, give us land again." So they knew the land was down deep in the water, and they all took turns. The bear was a great swimmer. He came back out of breath. He said, "Oh no, 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 no! It's too deep." Others couldn't swim. There was great swimmers among them, and they all came back out of breath, almost drowned. By the time they got to the muskrat says, "I'll go." And they were going to tease the muskrat. "Ah, you can't make it. We had our great swimmers." The muskrat will not hear anything more of it. He went. He went. He said, "I'll just do it." All right. So the muskrat went down, swimming down, and was there too long. All the other animals says, "Too long. It's too long. Where's the muskrat? It's too long. Must have drowned." And they were very sad for the muskrat. But one of the animals says, "Look, look, ski, ski, look." And they see a shadow coming up. And one of the animals got that. Sure enough, they found the body of the muskrat. And they brought it to Waynayboozoo. And they put it on the raft. And everyone was sad. They were grieving. But Waynayboozoo noticed something though. He noticed in the paw of the muskrat, he was holding on to something. He looked, he opened it up, he looked. And there it was. There it was. He found the land. Yay, muskrat did it. He says, "No, muskrat did it. Yeah, we got the land." And just to let you know that the muskrat is forever appreciated. Because later on, when he was given his life to continue on being a muskrat, that's the one that could live in any conditions. It could be very extremely hot or very cold, be in drought, be in flood. but that muskrat is the one that lives in a happy environment, no matter what the environment. And for us, that's one of the greatest foods that we can put in ourselves. Because that's medicine. Medicine, man. Well, anyway, on to the story. So when Waynayboozoo says, you know that muskrat fat sacrifice, I need somebody else to sacrifice. Who among you can bring us that land? And the one did not hesitate and came forward was grandfather turtle. And I don't know if you can see my turtle, but anyway, that's my turtle. And he says, put on the back of my shell and I'll become the land. So Waynayboozoo put the land on the back of that shell, asked for the four winds to bring life, just like how the migas, the shell brought life to the human being. These four winds started blowing onto the land, to the earth on top of the turtle, and it started growing. It grew and it grew, and the turtle was growing too. And the turtle was growing, the land was growing, it was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he says, all right, everybody, let's help the turtle. The turtle needs to be strong to hold the land. And they all were feeding turtle fish, everybody, every chance they could. That's how the muskrat came back to life, because Waynayboozoo says we need our best swimmer. We need muskrat. Muskrat came to life and helped out and feed the turtle. And that land grew and grew and grew and grew. It became our land. It became our mountains. It became our lakes. This is where all the animals, all our relationships, our relations are living. This is the plant world. This is the rocks and the earth, and this is the insects. Those are the ones that crawl, that burrow under the ground. Those are the four-legged, the two-legged, those that swim, those that fly. Now we had our place. And ever since then, many, many nations, many language groups, tribal groups, many peoples that are living on Turtle Island shares the same name. A lot of them say Turtle Island is where they live. But these are ancient stories that go back before even the time of the Ice Age. Because I guess as we look at it, we look at the time of the Ice Age. We look at the time, when did this happen on Earth? We look to science and those that read the ground, how oral traditions could match up. And you know what? It was 9005 AD that there was a great flood. And there are many that speculate where did this happen? Why did this happen? And I had friends that were scientists and anthropologists. They told me that because they're biased, they live in our area. They said it happened at the time of the Great Ice Age. Everything melted, but not right away, because what created was a big bowl of ice, So that's where they call Lake Agassiz. Lake Agassiz, this big body of water, fresh water. But it wasn't just Lake Agassiz, it was a Lake Ojibwe. It wasn't just a perfect bowl, it was more like a canoe or a big tub that stretches out from the Great Lakes, from the eastern coast to all the way to what we call today Saskatchewan. But it was in these parts that formed the glaciers that form our Great Lakes, our lakes that are here in the Great Lakes. But this bowl also goes to Hudson Bay today, and it was around for a while until it broke. It broke in three pieces. So it broke into the Great Lakes, it broke into the Hudson Bay, it broke into the East Coast, and all that fresh body of water ended up in the oceans. So to raise the ocean levels immediately, it was like, it just happened instantly, not these 40 years kind of stuff. It happened. It was called the Great Deluge, the Great Flood. It happened quick. So this is where oral traditions and science or history all are harmonizing with each other. And ever since then, our oral traditions will back this up, because it talks about a time of the Ice Age. It talks about when we're at the equator, not living uh, on the ice, but at the equator until it started melting. And then when it started melting, we moved along the coastlines. So there was major groups that went along the coastlines. The Anishinaabe went on the eastern side. There's others that went on the Pacific. When there was more, when all the water was gone, and they started going interior, they go up the middle. So this is where our oral traditions that we know today starts from there, and it started on the East Coast. So next time that I speak, I'll talk about how all the animal world wanted to talk to Waynayboozoo, have counsel with him, saying, "Stop! Don't give up your war against nature, against the water serpents, against anybody. Don't do that. That's not right. In exchange, we're going to teach you everything we know about medicines." So when I start session 3, we'll talk about medicines. But before I do, I'll just show you this map one more time. Because since that time, this is the Anishinaabe, this is nations. And when I say this is Anishinaabe, it's just our language to define us, that this became many nations. But these many nations have their own language. They in turn will have their own understanding. They'll have their own stories. But I'm just speaking from the Anishinaabe. And to me, they're all Anishinaabe. And we all share the same place called Turtle Island. So, miigwech, akana danaway maganak, all my relations. And I have my good friend Renee to ask questions if she like.
You know, I listened very intently, and I didn't know a lot of like the real creation stories. I think what we do in the school system is we share more about the Great Flood,
Hmm.
you know, and where that name Turtle Island comes from. So it's really interesting to hear all of the other stories there. Where did you learn all those stories from?
It was always in pieces from different teachers from all over. So I hear something that's very similar, then I'll hear something that's very new. Then I'll hear one that has more of a complete picture.
Yeah.
But in the end, that's what life journey is about, is look for truth. And that's why we have our teachers, the turtle, that essentially look for your truth. And that's what happens. So in a long time, it started to become a story that makes sense to me. So when I'm sharing this with you, it's not a complete picture, because those stories are quite long. They're quite long when you tell these things. So what ends up being is that people tell short versions of it.
Yeah.
I'm not able to teach you all of creation stories because there's so many.
Yeah. And I know that each culture has their own tricksters, right?
Oh,
Like
that's common.
yeah. So even my dad, who grew up with the Métis stories, they have tricksters too. I know the Inuit people they have stories of spirits in the water. You know, those ones are quite scary. I've heard some of those. That would be scary for kids to hear those, about those creatures coming out of the water and grabbing you. They're quite.
They're quite in detail, some of these stories. How that's why it kind of, for children, it might be you don't get to hear the great detail of how terrible it could be,
Yeah.
but you're gonna hear a more clean up version. But later on, as an adult, you can handle that. So you're gonna hear the full story.
Yeah. Well, my dad would tell around the campfires, he'd tell stories of Tijan. Tijan, T is short for petit, like little John.
Mm.
The stories there. And man, he got into all kinds of trouble. And we used to love hearing about it because he always ended up in just a real pickle over all the stuff that he did, you know, trying to be a smart aleck, you know, and trying to be greedy. And so he learned his lessons. So I guess there was some story. The stories really did have a lesson to them about greed and wanting, money and wanting things that you shouldn't have, material things. And so there was always that kind of that moral to the story. Because and then I've heard some of the Cree stories too. And there's an interesting film about, and I think it's illustrated by Norvell Morrisseau, and it's about Wissakichak.
Yeah.
And he was also a shape shifter as well. And the stories, and when he was in the human form, he had those rabbit ears, which is really interesting that you would mention that too, because in the stories there was the rabbit ears. So lots and lots of common stories, eh?
Well, that's what I said in the beginning, that we're talking about the same one anyway.
Yeah.
Is this our language? Just that we say it differently.
Right. Well, those are really interesting stories. I don't have any questions about the stories themselves. It's just interesting to hear all of those stories shared about, where things like kindness and generosity and honesty come about.
Yeah, it's the most important thing about these stories, that there's always a moral responsibility, like you have to learn from it.
Yeah.
Especially if your role models are always striving to do the good things, so maybe you don't have a bad character among your family to talk, like to see how bad it is. But if you
Yeah.
had a character, a trickster, that says, oh, if you did it this way, this is what happens.
Yeah. I think all our families have a trickster in the family.
Oh yeah, and in our way, we describe them as contraries.
Yeah.
That they're different because they're meant to be. That's their gift, and it's not. It's just there is to become our teacher, like even to push our boundaries a little bit, but to challenge us, because we can't have it. We can't have life too easy. We need to grow. We need challenges.
Right.
And sometimes a contrary in your family is they're just doing their job.
Yeah. That reminds me of my daughter, Danielle. He used to do silly things like stick green beans in her nose when we're at the dinner table.
See, that's a contrary.
Yeah, just to make people laugh. Like he always did silly things like that. But it really was made for a very interesting family dynamics. It would be very boring if everybody was the same.
That's right. And that's why we love everybody has a gift, everybody's unique. And being contrary is very common, especially from when you're a child. We're all been through a contrary stage.
Yeah.
That's being a child to that transition to be a young adult. Now, if you were able to keep your magic as a contrary, like if you love dancing, you love singing, you love acting, play acting, telling jokes, you really become you kept your magic, if you can carry that on for the rest of your life, and be proud that you're different. Because if it wasn't for people who are different, then this world will not have technology like the iPhone or computers or such.
Yeah. Great. Well,
So
we've reached our 1 hour, I think.
yes. So anyway, thank you again. The next session is gonna jump off of that council between all our relations and telling Waynayboozoo, don't create these type of wars or these events again. So in response, they revealed all their secrets. So we'll take it from there, and then we'll have that next week.
Okay, perfect.
So all my relations, akanadanawe maganak. Miigwech.
Miigwech.
Thank you.